Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks, they're available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? So tonight's night-ending bonus is a interview with a dear friend of mine. Many of you have seen him in the live stream. He goes by Mr. Haunted. Not the same Mr. Haunted that tells creepypastas on YouTube. Jimmy Petonito. He is a paranormal researcher, investigator. He worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren for years. He was friends, and in the movie Hostage with the Devil, Father Malachi Martin, Jimmy has pretty much seen a lot of just things that people only imagine seeing. Jimmy has seen it. Working with the Warrens, knowing Father Malachi Martin, working on his own, doing his own things. He's caught some amazing photos in cemeteries that he started off doing that. We'll get into all of this. We'll get into all talking about demonic entities and everything in this upload. So, and I'm going to be having him on here very shortly. He and I have come up with a couple of really good ideas. Got a new book coming out, and I believe it's the last chapter of the book is an experience that I share with him in his book, and just a great interview, great guy. I hope you guys love it. Okay, so today's interview is a friend of mine. His name is Jimmy Petonito. He worked side by side with the Warrens as a videographer, photographer. He also was acquainted with Father Malachi Martin. He has done and been part of many paranormal investigations, seen exorcisms with his own eyes. And actually, I was joking with him last time we were talking, and I said, wow, I said, you have your own portrayal in the Conjuring movies. And we laughed about that because he really does. So let's get into it. All right, everyone. I have been waiting for this interview since I had the honor of meeting this person. I was shocked, actually, when they reached out to me and said they were a subscriber of the channel and that they had been at the Paranormal Con that me and my daughter had gone to, and we didn't connect that day. Right now, I have Mr. Haunted, Jimmy Petonito, with us. How are you, Jimmy?
Jeff, I'm happier than the yellow-necked mountain warbler swinging on a branch of a hickory tree in July.
Awesome. I am just as excited. I've been looking forward to, you and I have talked as friends. I do consider you a dear friend. But we've never had the opportunity to just sit down and talk about the paranormal. I've read both of your books, the one that you co-authored, and then the newest, Mr. Haunted Origins, which congratulations on that. I'm very proud of you. And
thank you.
I know you are proud of yourself on that one. So I'll just start off. What got you started in the paranormal? Like, here's this young guy in, Connecticut. What got you going?
This is why I wrote the book. When I was a kid, Jeff, I was a nerdy little kid. Now I'm a nerdy man. My earliest influences were what made me who I am was I hope some of your listeners remember Kolchak the Night Stalker, which was a huge influence on me. They based the X-Files on this TV show, and it was in the early 70s. I was a little kid, and it was on every Friday night, and it was about a reporter that, there were murders in town or whatever, but then, of course, none of them were regular. It was either a vampire, a werewolf, or a zombie. So it was that. And then in school, we didn't have the internet. So we got this little pamphlet that used to come around, and you choose books that you want, and then like a month or two later they come in, and all they cared about were UFOs or ghosts or even urban legends, conspiracy stuff. That's what I liked. And there was a few UFO incidences when I was a child, and one kind of haunting type thing that was the reason I said I gotta learn about this, because it was so impactful at the time that it changes you.
Yeah.
Like, I want answers for this, and where do I get them?
Absolutely.
And the one more that's very important, I was trying to include everybody. There's called, that's not like nowadays where there's so many TV shows on the paranormal, you got to really search for them. And there was a show called In Search Of, when Leonard Nimoy was the host, and each week they'd have In Search Of ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, and one particular episode one week was In Search Of Ghosts. And Hans Holzer was the guest that week, and he was telling the viewers that, you don't have to have a haunted house. You don't have to live in a haunted house or be in a haunted location to see a ghost. You can see them wherever they want themselves to be known. So I was so happy to be informed of this. I asked my mom for a flashlight, turned all the lights off down in the basement, and I went down with my flashlight trying to find a ghost. And that was those are big influences.
Yeah.
Until I'll jump to here, and then you could get into this if you want.
Yep.
Then, so I was always interested in this. Had a huge interest because of an incident. I can tell you about that if you want, and the UFO ones. Let me tell you about the one incident when I was a kid.
You tell us whatever you want. I really want to hear it all, to be honest with you.
I did not grow up in a haunted house.
Okay.
I was a creepy little kid, would try to, move a matchbox on my kitchen table with my mind powers.
Yeah.
For hours, I'd stand there trying to, and it didn't happen. But one night, my parents were divorced, and my mom had a guy over, and they were in the kitchen, and she I remember this like yesterday. Goes, Jimmy, I'm having somebody over. She wants privacy. Stay in your room and don't come down. They're just having dinner, It's okay, Mom, no problem. So I went upstairs to my room, and it was around 7 o'clock at night, and it was summer because it was still light out. It wasn't like a scary atmosphere.
Right.
And I was laying on my bed reading a comic book. I think it was the Mets game was on the radio. I was just listening to it for background. And I had an AM radio, so that's all I could listen to. And I was laying on my stomach with my feet bent in the air. You could picture that. My feet were bent over my back, kind of. And all of a sudden, the radio started changing stations. So I was confused. And then even as a kid, I said, it must be some kind of interference or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how radios work. And then I kept doing it. So I peered over, and you could see the knob on the radio moving back and forth slowly.
Yeah,
So,
and it was
freaking out.
It was different back then because, like you just said, there was an actual knob to where radios now. There's like, you know, there's no knob. It's a button, and it technology has changed so much. It could just change automatically with like a glitch or whatever. But back in the day, there was a knob that you physically had to turn and an orange little line that you followed to match up the station. Yeah, that's crazy.
And then it was a knob like the size of a coaster.
Yeah.
It was that big. So I see it going back and forth, and then I start panicking. I'm like, oh my God. Of course you jump to ghost because you don't know anything else. What else? It's a ghost. So I said, I'm more scared of my mother, though. I said, my mother said, don't go downstairs. So then it continues to do this, and then something threw my legs down on the bed really hard. And I said, screw this. You know, I ran downstairs and said, Ma, there's a ghost in my room. It changed my radio stations and threw my legs down. And can you imagine her disgust, like with her little kid? Like she has some new guy over, she's trying to impress. And I complaining about a ghost in my room. And she goes, get back up in bed. There's no such thing as ghosts. So here we are.
Now, what's the story with that UFO experience?
Oh my God! You know, and I feel bad because people are going to hate me, especially the UFO researchers, because I think there's people that made like their whole living on UFO research, and you know they do talks and stuff. I've had way more than my share of UFO experiences, and it's like that's not even my thing, and it's becoming one of my things. But the first one was, and this is how Kolchak, the Night Stalker. I'm very particular with dates because I was a little nerd. You know, right. I used to keep my stats when I played baseball, and you know, I was very particular. And whatever year Kolchak, the Night Stalker, was on TV, that's how I know what year this happened, because I had to watch it every Friday night at 8:00. And my mom asked if we're going to see her friend that night. I said, Mom, Night Stalker's on. I gotta watch Night Stalker. She made a deal with me. There used to be these old radios that you could get CBS and ABC on, just the audio.
Okay.
It's called some kind of multi-band radio. So she goes, well, you can listen to it on the way home on the radio if you want. I was like, all right. So so we're going on the way to her friend's house, and we're on this bridge, and if anybody's familiar with Connecticut, it used to be called the Q Bridge. It connects New Haven with East Haven, and it's about 100 feet off the water. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I see this thing like parallel to me, but like 100 feet off the water, and it was a sphere with spikes coming out of it, and it was very symmetrical, the spikes coming out, and every other one had this red light at the end of the spike. And I said, Mom, what's that? She's like, I don't know. And then I was thinking in my head, is it some kind of is it a weather thing? I don't know what it is. I never read about spike UFOs in my UFO books I had.
Yeah.
So then it starts doing these random skittering movements. Like there's no pattern to it. Just over there, boom, now it's over there, now it's up there. So, you know, it came and went. And we went to a friend's house. Years later, like less than 10 years later, I was a guest on my friends that did a UFO radio show. And I had, because I never heard of this thing, and I was reluctant to tell people because I never heard of spike thing. I thought people would make fun of me. And on break, I said, hey guys, I want to tell you something. And I told them a story. And they go, oh yeah, the old spiked UFO. I go, oh, you heard of this? Like, oh yeah. So then I looked it up right afterwards, like, yeah, I guess it's a thing.
Yeah. And
there's even pictures of it not pictures of the actual, but you know, renderings.
Renderings, yeah.
Like, yeah, that looks just like it. And then, this is the late 70s. My parents were divorced, and my dad was driving us to his house, and we're driving down a 4-lane highway, very busy section, and we look ahead, and every car is parked off the side of the road. There's just nobody on the road anymore. I'm like, what's going on here? So we don't know what's going on, but he follows suit and parks on the side also. And then we see everybody's out of their cars looking up in the air, and there's this thing, and I was upset because I always want to see a flying saucer, and this was a cigar-shaped one. And I want to see a cigar. I want the flying saucer. It was right over. It wasn't like, people say, I saw this dot in the sky and it was moving kind of weird, so I think it's a UFO. This thing was immense, like hundreds of yards long, the cigar shaped, and the lights on it. I can't even. In Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that magnificent looking thing that came down at the end.
Yeah.
With those lights, like. That's what the lights were like. It was just like you couldn't even do. I couldn't duplicate them with an artist's eye. It was just beautiful, and it was just cruising across the treetops, no sound, very slow. And we just watched it for like a couple minutes, and went half a mile or so, and then it just freaking turned. It took a left and went up into the sky like a bullet.
Wow!
So there was that one,
and there was people, just hundreds of people.
Every car was parked watching this thing. And of course, I don't know if you wanted to go back in time and say, did anybody else see this? Did somebody take a picture?
Wow.
And then a couple more later. But, the Hudson Valley incident?
Vaguely.
But it's this big event, UFO event that took place through the 80s. I guess mostly mid to late 80s. And I've heard about it only from reading about it and reading, hearing people talk about it. But my mother, my mother's neighbor came to visit her last year. She's a lady that's not into any of this stuff. They were sitting at the picnic table, and they said, the neighbor said, Anne, my mother, do you remember that big UFO that was over our house in 1980? She knew the exact year. I think it was 82 or 83. And she's like, no. And she goes, okay. She goes, her and her family were inside the house watching TV. It was night, like 9 o'clock at night or something. And so the whole house lit up. So how is the whole house lighting up? So they went outside and they saw this black boomerang shaped thing. I forget how many feet she said how wide it was, with pink lights on it. We're sitting. There's this big giant tree that this is in the middle of both of our yards. She was sitting on top of that tree for 8 minutes. We watched it for 8 minutes. This huge thing, no sound again. She described it just like everyone else did that saw this, that saw this incident. And then I'm mad because it was there for 8 minutes. It zoomed across our neighborhood and went over a mountain. But I was so mad because this thing was one of the most major UFO
sightings,
in the United States. It was over my head for 8 minutes. I didn't get to see it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of books. Linda Zimmerman wrote a lot of books about the Hudson River Valley, and it started with that book. But then she wrote more about maybe they were attracted to the location because of the magnetic attraction, satanic activity, like occult activity. Cryptid activity, and she incorporated a lot of that in her books. I don't know if you ever read one of her books, but yeah,
I haven't. I know. I think I know her though.
Pretty interesting. Well, everybody. So when you started because I know you just from prior to knowing you, I had heard that you had done a lot of camera work and taken a lot of great photos of paranormal activity, whether it be ghosts, demons, etc. When did that all start for you?
That's perfect. Perfect segue. You know what I want to mention before we forget, Jeff? We're also going to be very sad. Amy, my little sweetheart, who introduced your show to me, we wouldn't be on if it wasn't for her.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Amy.
If I forget, you kill me.
Yeah.
So,
kill us both.
So like I said, when I was a kid, I collected books. I was interested because of my little ghostly experience. So when I was in college, the Warrens were coming to do a lecture around Halloween. I was a freshman. And also another huge influence was the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall picture. Yep. Which was in a book I had called Real Ghosts. And I had that since I was 11 years old. And I had the picture of the brown lady, the famous picture that depicts a woman descending a staircase. So it looks like the woman that supposedly haunts this manor in England. So I was reading about it, and they called it a psychic photograph. And I said, wow, Wes. It's like they said this is a picture that you take a picture, but you don't see what you see after it's developed.
Yeah.
You see images on it. So I said, I want to get one like that. So I said, that's what where do I go? There was no haunted places. I was a little kid. So in college, the Warrens came to talk to us, and they showed that same picture on their screen under the presentation. I'm like, oh, I found my people. They like that stuff too. So then they said, there's lots of haunted cemeteries right here in Connecticut. And they talked about the Brown Lady picture. So I was like, I wasn't even aware that there are haunted places you can go to and take pictures. So I went to Union Cemetery is in Easton, Connecticut. And there's been sightings of they call it the White Lady, since the 1950s. Multiple witnesses, police officers, multiple sightings of this lady. Nobody knows who she is, but I said, as soon as I was able to find out where it was, I said, I want to go. And I was really under the impression, a naive kid, that she walks around. And if you spend enough time there, you can get a picture. So I went there with a couple rolls of film, and I waited patiently, an hour or two, and I saw no ghost. I was very disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said, let me take 2 of my rolls of film just because to say I was here. And that could have been at the end of my little career there. But when I got them developed, I got some very strange images on some of the pictures. Even then, you're skeptical. He's like, well, was it foggy? I know it wasn't foggy. I wouldn't take pictures in the fog, but, what could have been fog or exhaust from a car? Or, it's not like, what is this?
Right. So but you were in a cemetery at night, correct?
Right.
Flash. You were using a old flash camera?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to happen. I was using flash, yes.
Okay.
I didn't know any better at the time. And then I even learned about all the stuff that flash could do, iris lights, all this stuff from a photographer. Because I wanted to know. If it's not genuine, I want to know.
Right.
And I started taking a picture purposely. I take pictures of car exhaust, cigarette smoke. I'd go there when it was foggy, when it was raining, say this is what it looks like, under these conditions.
Yeah, comparison photos.
Because, yeah. So every once in a while, now when you get pictures, and the orb stuff, I don't save any orb pictures, but I started getting some crazy stuff. Like you could see a figure, a face,
Yeah.
That's kind of cool because it's in a cemetery. Who knows? So then I had enough of these pictures. I started a whole album. So I call them the ghost pictures, and then it got to be a popular spot, like in the weekend especially. I used to go every night because I had no kids, wasn't married, and I worked at 4 a.m. in the morning, so I'd almost go every night to take a roll or something, or at least hang out and see if I could see anything. And I had a whole album full, and one night there was this police officer that you made friends with him. He used to go there all the time, and he goes, so let me see what pictures you got there. So I had my album open on the back of my truck. And this woman came over. Her name's Debbie, I found out. And she was looking up. She goes, some of these are really good. And she goes, I work with the Warrens. She goes, they would love to see these pictures. I was like, wow, cool. I saw them, I think a few years ago at my college. So she invited me to go to the class the next Monday and show them the pictures. Mm-hmm. And I went up with my friend Rick, who also liked investigating with me. And he told me, because back then, National Enquirer was a big deal.
Yeah, Bat Boy.
And yes, Bat Boy. I still believe in Bat Boy. We must protect him at all costs.
Yes, you and I both.
So some of those stories are true.
Some are.
Ones. And so we went up there, and the National Enquirer was huge. So he said, National Enquirer might give you like $1 million for this. Like, there's one that looks like a face and a mouth open, and right there in the cemetery. And I said, I know, they're probably might be worth a lot of money. And he goes, make sure they don't take them. I said, no, they're not taking these. So then we get up there, and of course, there was about like a dozen to 20 people there. and Lorraine, and they're looking at my pictures. I'm like, holy mackerel, these people are just in my college talking about this stuff, and now they're looking at my pictures. Cool. So then Lorraine goes, oh, honey, these are really good. Can we have them? I said, of course you can have them. So I had negatives, but still, they were so nice. And what was cool was, within a year, they incorporated some of my pictures, because I had a really cool one from Dudleytown, if anybody's familiar with that, and a couple of the other local cemeteries. And they incorporated a few of my pictures into their presentation.
Okay.
So, like, a few years later, I went to go see them, and my pictures were in the show. And it was really cool, because they'd call me up and say, hey, one of our students took this picture. You want to come up and talk about it? No. Terrified of public speaking, but you get used to it. And that's how that started, investigating with them.
That's awesome. That's an amazing story right there. And they weren't famous at that point. Like, I think they may have made like a couple of TV appearances being interviewed by local news at that point, right?
Yeah, I think locally there probably were like some little local celebrities.
Yeah.
In the college circuit, people began to learn who they were. But I was saying, it was very different back then, because look at the difference. But Ed always used to like go to a diner after we go to a case. So we come back anywhere from midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning, driving back from somewhere. And we always stopped at the same diner on the way back to their house. And I remember people whispering, just like they show on the. On one of the Conjuring movies, they go, look, those are weirdos or something.
Right.
Like, that's the way people talked about them. And when we were sitting there, I was like, oh my God, these people are brutal.
Yeah, it was a whole different climate. It was a whole different climate back then.
And nowadays, hey, can I get a picture with you? Can you sign my napkin?
Yeah, absolutely. So you meet the Warrens, and you then start going on cases with them. You don't have to go deep into all of the cases, but is there a case that you went on that sticks out the most for you, that affected you the most?
Yes. There is one that sticks out the most. And especially because it was, and I talk about this in the book there, it was very special because it was the first one. Remember, they had a large group. Like, if you go to they call it classes or meetings. And they call it, what's the word for it? They call them this, whatever we met on Monday, so they call it classes or meetings or whatever. But on any of these Monday night classes, there could be anywhere from, 10 to 30 people.
Yeah.
And people would come and go. Some would go for a few months, never come back. Some there for years. It was always a changing crew. And there's people that didn't go, that were still part of their group. So it was a large group, and you couldn't take everybody to all the cases all the time. So especially when you're new, you'd usually go with more seasoned people. So we'd always go to a house with, we were new, so they'd send us with other people that were more experienced, or with with them. So the first time me and Rick, Lorraine called us up, and she goes, hey guys, there's a house in Waterbury, Connecticut, that the woman is on her front steps crying. She will not go back into the house until somebody gets there. Are you guys available? And I remember I said, we never went anywhere by ourselves. It was always in a large group or a small group, because we were learning, And it was the first case that we got called on, like, ourselves. It's like, heck yeah, well, we're going to go. I don't know how we found the house, because there was no Google then. I don't even know how we found this thing. But just like she said, we're driving around, and it was hard to read the street, the numbers on the houses, because it was getting dark. We weren't familiar with the area, and then we see a woman crying on the front porch. So that must be the place over there, And then and we got up there. She's very frantically trying to tell us her story. Like, we're just parking the car, trying to get our stuff out, and she's crying. I think she's 19 or 20, 21 years old. She's a very young girl. She already had, I think, a 3-year-old boy. And she was saying that she keeps seeing this shadow figure, and she's not go back inside the house. She's terrified. So he's okay. Well, wait till we get upstairs to tell us your story. And whatever I have in the book is the right thing, because I researched it so it's accurate. It's either a second or third floor apartment, like the whole floor is theirs.
Yep. And
we've got up there, and the door, like the knob turns back and forth, but it wouldn't open. Like it wouldn't go forward. So she's like, I don't know why this is happening. So Rick does the old, like, on the police shows how they put their shoulder into the door and they'll open it, like in a raid. And this big giant crash. And now she's hysterical because there's an exercise bike that obviously must have been wedged its handlebar underneath the doorknob from inside. So, and in my head, it's like this the exercise bike was over there, which she points at like 8 feet away. Because when I left, the exercise bike was over there. It was like hardwood floors. So in my head, I was like, oh my God, this exercise bike was slid over here and wedged itself underneath this handlebar and the doorknob to keep her out, whatever. So now I'm thinking, well, is there a back entrance here? Because, she could have done that herself and then ran around the back. I don't know. And then we go to the back door, and because of some recent fire, I know it's against codes, I'm sure, but the whole back door was like blocked off or something, and they had nailed shut because of whatever they were doing there. So now I'm like, wow, I said either she's telling the truth or something going on here, or she's just totally making up stories.
Right.
So her son was very little. Her mom used to watch the kid a lot because of the stuff going on, and her husband worked nights, so she's home by herself a lot when all this stuff was happening. She's terrified. So I said, let's set up in her little dining area first. So I had the video camera on her, the old-fashioned tape recorder in front of her. I had my little hand camera. And me and Rick are interviewing her simply to get her story from, how did this start? How long you been here? From the beginning. And I starts telling us her story, and she keeps trembling and pointing her shaking finger across the room, saying, don't you see it? Don't you see it? And we're like, we don't see anything. Because it's right there. Don't you see it? What are you seeing? There's a shadow figure. It's like a man right there. We don't see anything.
Right.
So I said, we don't know. This might be a bust here. So now she goes, it just went. We go out further, and she goes, now it just went into the bedroom. We don't believe her, honestly. So we say, okay, show us where it went. And we go down the hallway into the bedroom, and she's pointing. She goes, don't you see it right there? And now me and Rick look at each other like, well, I kind of do see something. And it's just like she said, it was like a man outside of the wall. Like it wasn't on the wall. It was like it was like 2 feet in from each corner in the back left of the room. And it was just standing there, just a shadow. And she goes, do you see it? I'm like, well, I kind of do see something there. And then I look over to Rick, because what terrible investigators we are, because I left my camera, my video camera, and everything in the other room, because I frankly didn't believe her. So, this might be an opportunity of a lifetime to get an actual picture of a shadow man.
Yeah.
And I said, well, do I risk going back to get the camera? Because then it might disappear and I'll never see something like this again. And he goes, let's try to touch it. I said, all right. So we were about at least maybe 8 to 10 feet away from this thing. And we literally took like maybe a step and a half towards it very slowly. And it turned to its right and walked into the wall, the side wall. And then in my head, it looked like it would have went into the hallway on the other side. So I quickly ran around to see if it came out the other side. It didn't. But, so then, now we believed her, of course. So now we got the whole story. And, if you want to hear more of this story or
it's the Muffin Man chapter in your book, which I was gonna.
It is the Muffin Man chapter.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing either.
Yeah. I was gonna say that right after that.
So I like that you knew that. But apparently I didn't know this at the time either. But stacking apparently is a fairly common thing with some hauntings and especially poltergeists.
Can you tell the audience what stacking is, please?
Stacking, yes. This is what I said. Choose whatever I have in the book. I don't remember the exact things all the time. Very young girl. She would bake muffins, for example, and she'd put them on top of the refrigerator. She's smaller than I am, She's like 5 feet tall. She put them on top of the refrigerator and towards the back, just so her little 3-year-old son wouldn't see them and try to get at them.
Yeah.
And even if he can't get up there, okay. And now they go shopping or do whatever they're doing throughout the day, and they come back home, and she go to get the muffins, and the dish is there, the little doily or whatever she put underneath is there, but the muffins are missing. So she blamed her, husband or boyfriend, whatever, and she's like, "Did you take these?" She said, "Well, why would I take them and not admit to it?" Like, what? And then I think somebody broke into their place and was taking stuff, but it was only baked goods they take. And then days later, they should be in the. She was going in the closet to get the vacuum or something, and she found the muffins all stacked up in the closet. So that kind of scared her. And another time, she made cookies. The same thing, put it on the refrigerator towards the back, and it did whatever they were doing. And later, the cookies are missing.
Mm-hmm.
So she had friends in the kitchen. She had company over, and the little boy was playing in the living room, and he came out trembling. And she's like, "Whoa, what's the matter?" And he couldn't even talk. He's like, his hand's trembling, and now he's pointing towards the back of the couch in the living room. And she goes over, and there's a big stack of cookies in the back of the couch, which is, it's not scary to think about, but it's kind of creepy. Like, why is that like that?
Yeah, it's not.
He understands.
It's not scary to think about, like me and you talking about it or people listening to it. But if you're in your home and there's this random stack of cookies with no explanation,
it's creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy as all can be. Yeah.
So now and then there was complaints of the boy would also. She'd check on him frequently because she's scared of what's happening. And one day she checked on him in his bed and he was sleeping, but every toy from his toy box and the closet where it was piled on top of him, stacked. And we tried to duplicate it. She was like, you can't just pile stuff on top of your body. Like, it just doesn't work.
Right.
Like every toy was stacked on top of the kid. Then sometimes he'd come out and he'd be all bruised. And he said he has a new friend named Bobby, I think it was. And she goes, "Well, Bobby, that was his imaginary friend." And she goes, "Why, did he hit you?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Sometimes Bobby's mean to me." So we don't really know what happened. But then there was this other, now it's getting a little violent. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple things. One time in the shower, the shadow thing, pulled the shower curtain. While she was in the shower, pulled the shower curtain out and scared her, and she put a towel on and ran into the street. I'm going to forget, that's most of the idea here.
Yeah.
So we went there for weeks as investigators. Because, we're trying to get evidence for Ed and Lorraine. The best thing that was working for them, because we were just investigators, so it wasn't our job to solve the problem. It was just, hey, try to get some evidence on camera or tape or audio or whatever.
Yeah, like fact finders.
Yeah, and then we go back to them and let them deal with it.
Yep.
So we just go back and try to get evidence. So eventually the people were it was the end of their lease. Oh, I forgot one of the best parts. The little boy had LA Gear sneakers, the kind that light up when you walk. And like I said, the mother used to come over. The woman's mother used to come over a lot and help her with the kid. And they were moving out. It was the end of the lease, the end of the month. She goes, "You guys can do whatever you want if you want to do experiments or whatever," and whatever. So they left behind the pair of sneakers. So I was like, "Well, aren't you going to take the sneakers?" And she's like, "Well, because they also complain that the sneakers blinked at them at inopportune times, when they're not supposed to." And they thought it was a spirit trying to communicate because nobody was walking with them. They just start blinking back and forth. And the lady said, "It seems like they're mocking me." So I said, "Well, maybe the battery's broken or, they're defective." She goes, "No, you don't understand." She goes, "I saw them walk across the boy's room with no feet in them."
Yeah.
So, of course, can I have them?
You got a picture of him in the book, guys. This right here, this is the book. Really quick. Mr. Haunted, Origins. It's on Amazon, and the photo of the sneakers are in this book. The photo of the apartment with Jimmy looking at that corner, it just amazing. So I'm really happy. Like, I'm giddy that you're telling me all this after this.
I'm giddy to tell the stories.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You know, I'll tell you something. If people don't know me, they understand. They won't understand. But people that know me, I don't embellish anything. I don't stretch anything.
No.
I try to tell the 100% truth all the time. You don't have to worry about lying about anything. And whatever I say happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had nothing amazing happening. Nobody's head spinning or anything, but seen some crazy stuff. So those sneakers became my first little souvenir from a haunted house. So the end of the story is they were moving out, and we had the house blessed by a priest, a local priest, and he put I used to record everything. That's why I'm not in a lot of the videos, because I'm recording. Like, I was always behind the camera recording everything. And he put these little St. Benedict medals on behind every door, in the closets, on the ceiling, everywhere he could. He put these St. Benedict medals, and I could just imagine what the next tenant thought when they saw these. And I actually have a follow up to that story. Coincidentally, a coworker of mine, and about a year from that time, I was telling him the story, and we're trying to narrow it down where I'm talking about where we were. He goes, "Wait a minute." He goes, "Was it whatever house?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "The girl I was seeing lived on the floor below you, below where you were." And she goes, "I couldn't get any sleep. Those Ghostbusters were running around all week long." I was like, "Yeah, that was me."
That's funny.
And then I said, "Wait," I said, sometimes you don't know what happens later, afterwards. I said, could you have her ask the guy or whoever's living up there now if they're having any issues?" And so he got back to me after a while, and he said that the man said, "Well," he goes, "I haven't seen any ghosts or anything like that, but he keeps his packs of cigarettes in the refrigerator." And he goes, "Then I'll come home and they're not there." And I'm thinking he's going to find them stacked up somewhere.
Stacked somewhere, yeah.
You go check behind the couch, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one that sticks out most.
Yeah.
With the first one.
The shadow person, what is your because we hear about shadow people, and I've narrated encounters about them. There's a YouTube channel, The Ghost of Carmel, Maine. And he's got an absolutely horrifying video of this shadow person behind a curtain, and it drops out behind the curtain, but there's no person, there's nothing there, and it's like, I saw it the first time and it freaked me out. And of course it was dark when I'm watching the damn thing. What is your take on the shadow person? Is it a ghost? Is it a spirit, demon?
I want to get to the video thing first.
Okay.
While I'm thinking of it, because not to be a negative Nelly, but when we saw something, when we only had 35 millimeter cameras and there was no Photoshop and this crazy stuff, if you took a picture of something, it had to be there. Yeah. And now it's like it's only as credible as the person that's showing you their evidence. Yep. Because I can make aliens appear in my backyard right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Crazy. So, as far as the shadow things, back when we were kids, it was like three. It's like you kind of categorize the ghostly stuff into three things. Like, it's a ghost or spirit, which means it was a dead person that's somehow walking around. Right. Then there was a poltergeist, which seemed like a whole different phenomenon. It just trashes your house and it comes and goes like a tornado. And then there's like the demonic stuff, which is different. And it was like kind of three categories. Like you have to put your little haunting into one of those three categories. And now as you get older, I think there's like 1,000 of those dots on the spectrum that we're just learning. There's so much more, and some it's not that simple. And as far as shadow things, I don't know what that. I mean, it could be something we don't even understand. Yeah. Usually it doesn't. Usually the shadow thing isn't something positive, though. No. It's not like your little Aunt Millie with a little bonnet coming to say goodnight to you, which is creepy. But
yeah, dimensional. Have you ever thought of maybe they're dimensional? Yes.
Like, do you know my we'll call it Native American story?
Fill us in.
When I was a kid, which is cool. As I said, I was even interested in urban legends as a young child because I lived right across the street from Sleeping Giant, which was a mountain that the story is that this giant used to terrorize the townspeople.
Yeah.
And they one day they got a plan together, and they're going to feed him with they're going to have this big feast and overfeed him and give him so much drink that he's going to be tired and go to sleep. So they said that it worked, and because this mountain range looks like a guy sleeping, and they said it worked, and he's still sleeping to this day, waiting to wake up, So I woke up right across the street from an urban legend. Between that mountain and my house was just woods, and that was my playground as a kid. And I used to walk in kindergarten. I used to walk. They would never allow this nowadays. But I used to walk across the woods, across main roads to go to kindergarten at 5 years old. And I used to cut across every day, these woods. And one day I was coming home from school, and there was this old ancient wooden fence that ran across the woods, and half of it was falling down and over time just falling apart. And I would always take the same route back home. And one day I was walking, and all of a sudden I see, and back then we called him an Indian. I saw an Indian standing, leaning against one of the posts of the fence. I saw his profile, like from the left, the whole from top to bottom, solid. He had no shirt on. He had like the typical pants you'd imagine on. He had a band around his left arm, and his right arm was perched on top of the fence post under his chin, like he was looking yonder, like in thought, right. Pensive. So I'm looking at this thing for a good, not a second, a good few seconds. Let it sink in here. I'm like, what is he doing here? I'm thinking it's a real person. He's like, but what's he doing here? And then he slowly turns and looks at me and kind of like jumps back with his head a little bit, like he was shocked to see me.
Yeah.
And then poof, he's gone. I saw him enough that I know what I saw. But and as a kid, I always said that's a ghost. But because of his interaction with me, I'm wondering in his time, did he see me and I didn't belong there? And he was like, who's this kid? I don't belong there.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of overlaps and all that interdimensional stuff going on that we don't know about.
Yeah, the in Andrea Perron's book, she with the Conjuring House, she mentions there was a time that she walked into the dining room, and I don't know, have you been to the Conjuring House?
Yes.
Okay, so the far back room, and then you pass the stairwell, and then there's that kind of middle room, and she had walked into that room and saw this kind of like
it's like the family?
Yeah, like a Quaker kind of esque family sitting there eating
by the fireplace.
And they both saw each other. And they both had that shocked look, like the ghosts were shocked to see a human, and
like the two realities overlapped a little bit for a second. That's what I think happens more often than we think about. With a lot of these things, I think it's just two realities overlapping for a second somehow.
A complete glitch.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, it really does.
It makes the most sense out of anything.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about that, like what these things are seeing, on their end. They obviously have to have some sort of
they might have wrote a book in their day saying this weird family was walking by us while we were at a fireplace.
Yeah. Interesting. Like this girl had these strange clothes on, and you often wonder if that time crossed over. So
I believe in all that stuff.
Yeah, interesting. So that was your first case with Ed and Lorraine Warren. How long did you work with them for, or like a student under them for, or whatever?
For most of the 90s, we started. It was around 92.
Okay.
Where we first went, and then for years. years, like 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. But then there's a time where you just kind of like, you feel like you graduated a little bit.
Yep.
And he wanted to, like, we wanted to have our own group, only because, at the time it was frowned upon, but, you know, because the group was huge, and a lot of these cases we'd go like to maybe the first interview, and then never, because they were doing so many at the same time. You know, it's not like we have the internet now where you can put everything on a program, and so you can look at it and say, okay, we got all this stuff going on right now. Like, there's no way of keeping track of all these cases, for us anyway. And we're always curious, what happened to these people? What happened to these? And then we find out, like, one house, like, they send multiple groups, like, every night of the week, 3 or 4 different people. And it's for one reason to try to capture evidence. And for two, it was like to give everybody a chance to go. So I understood it, but it was like, I wanted to follow a case from beginning to end and find out how the whole thing works, like the whole process. I don't even care if it's, you know, a real bad case. I just want to see how it is from beginning to end and, you know, see how the whole thing works.
Yeah, yeah.
So we started our own side group, which we just, they had the worst of the worst cases. Everybody says, especially with the Warrens, oh my God, everything they did was demonic. It was like, but they were getting the worst of the worst cases. Like, you know, they weren't going to the house where we saw Aunt Millie walk by with a candle. Right. It was like, you know, my kid's getting smashed in the head by something. You know, they went to that one. So yeah, they were going to the worst cases. And we said, you know, we just want a regular, we want that Aunt Millie ghost. You know, we just wanted our own little, we did our thing on the side. But that all backfired, Jeff. Really? The first case we had with the little side group there, and mind you, I still kept coming to class every week. And they'd be talking about us, like, oh, that other group that formed, like, yeah, that's me. That was us. But the first case that we got was this house in Massachusetts, which I think I changed the name of the town. I think I'll call it the Devil in Deerfield chapter. Yeah. Where we were just looking for a regular haunting. We didn't want something bad. And this started off like, you know, they'd heard some scratching on the walls. I was 18 years old. Her and her boyfriend had their first apartment together. They went to the house. They spent all their money fixing the house up, making it the way they want. They got white carpeting throughout the first floor. Yeah. And they were upstairs. When they were upstairs sleeping, they used to hear scratching on the walls, and they instantly said, "Okay, we have some kind of rodents or something." So they said it was really weird because we went to the yellow pages, like, you know, back in the olden days. I don't know if they do now, but the telephone companies would throw the yellow pages, your telephone book, on your driveway. On your driveway and on your porch, yep. They just hand them out. So the one we got, she said, we opened up the yellow pages and there's an actual, one of the ads circled with an arrow to it. Like, so we called them. And it wasn't part of the ad. You know, it's like somebody did it. And so they called them. They couldn't find anything. And now they actually had, and like I said, they weren't rich. They spent all their money fixing up the house, new wallpaper throughout the house, the white carpet, and so this carpet actually had, you could see the scratches in the wallpaper. And they slept on the second floor, so they'd see scratches low on a staircase, and then gradually the wallpaper right next to their bedroom. So they called for help saying, you know, we're scared now. Now it's going to come into our room? And they started hearing whispers in their ears and stuff, especially when they were going to bed. And they were terrified. And then one night they said how could I make this G-rated? They said they just spent all their money on white carpeting. And they said one night they woke up in the morning to a big pile of dog shit? You know, yes, thank you, dog shit. In the middle of their carpet, I said, you know, it wasn't like it was like something Clifford, the big red dog, would leave. You know, it was just a huge, huge pile of some kind of whatever. And they just didn't understand it. So they call us up, and, you know, one thing led to another. And when we went to interview them, the woman's parents came for the interview. And they said, we brought some tapes with us. We don't know if this is connected or not, but we wanted to show them to you. So this is when the girl was 13 years old. And it's tape after tape after tape of she's lying in bed, and like one tape, her arm will be stretched above her head, and her arm's getting wrenched back and forth so fast, like I can't even do it myself. It's just getting wrenched back and forth behind her back, over her head, like
this whipping motion.
Her wrist just throwing her all over the place.
Yeah,
it's like it hurts so bad, just cut my arm off, like that. And then the mother's like just trying to soothe her while she's laying in bed. So what do we do? So they were not recording these for paranormal reasons. They want to show a doctor, like, what's wrong with my daughter? So then there's another video of the girl standing in the hallway. Another, the same thing. And this thing twisted her arm enough to break bones in her hand and wrist.
Wow.
So you have to do that to yourself in the air.
Yeah.
And then she'd be in the hallway, and it was just some stone or wall to wall. There'd be another video of her just dribbling like she's crawling across a room, and she's dribbling and giggling. And like, what is this? So they're recording all this for doctors, and I forgot how many tens of thousands of dollars they said that they spent on specialists to help my daughter. So they said it kind of went away as quickly as it came. So it lasted for about a year, and then went away. And it was, we don't know if this is connected, so we're showing you. So we presented our story to Bishop McKenna, who learned helps with this kind of stuff. And he said, "Well, I'm open to do an exorcism of her home and her if she's willing." So when we got up there, this is the first case we have. And luckily, back in those days, he welcomed people to record exorcisms because he wants people to see that this stuff is real and to document it in case something happens. Like, you know what I mean? If this person, if God forbid they get hurt or hurt themselves, or
a lawsuit or prison or something like that.
Yeah, for liability, like it's important.
Yeah.
So I set up my video camera, and the girl, the 18-year-old girl this was happening to, she even told her, she said, I don't think anything's going to happen. She was willing to go through the thing. She was, but, I don't feel like there's anything. We're fine. We didn't expect anything, in other words. So we had the camera set up on her, and we've never done this before. So just in case, we had one person in back of her and one person on each side, just in case, because he kind of directed us what to do. And him and his assistant were kneeling, doing the litany of the saints, which they always did before an exorcism. And just as he started doing that, she started, her eyes just changed, and she started moving around in her chair, very uncomfortable, she's not comfortable, side to side, and trying to get up a little bit, sitting back down, oh my, what's going on here? So then he directs, he finally faces her and starts this thing, and she starts freaking out and screaming, holy shit, this is whatever it is, it's real. And so now she's trying to get up, going after the priest. So luckily we came prepared. He had restraints, so we restrained her at her ankles and wrists. And this went on for an hour or so. And what was really, really weird thing about it was, it might have been just poetic as far as video-wise goes, but it was a very dark day, and she was screaming and thrashing around the whole time, calling everybody names, this and that, and as soon as she got up, put her head down, it kind of looked like it was over. Yeah. This ray of light came and shined right on her from the window. It was oh. And that was it. And we thought, wow, this is great. Somebody's going through shit and they just get an exorcism and they're all better. That's the only time it ever worked like that. Right. Because there's been other people that had multiple exorcisms, and sometimes
nothing worked. Yeah. When what were you gonna say, Jim?
But that was the tape. That was the video. That we had a website. They were very new back then. A website. But it kind of describe the group and what we do, and a little write-up about that story. And ABC, when ABC was huge, this was in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, some producer from ABC came across her story and contacted us and said we want to do a Halloween special on exorcism, and would you be willing to be part of it?
It was called like Real Exorcisms or something, right?
It was yeah. It was it was called ABC Primetime Live.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many, you could look it up, how many millions of people watched this thing, because it wasn't 500 channels back then, you know?
Yep.
And everyone saw this apparently. And the woman agreed to it, and we agreed to it. So after this thing aired, people started reaching out to their website saying, my daughter's having this happen, my husband's having it, like all over the country. I said, we can't find help here. So our bishop here was willing to help people, but we couldn't go all over the country and do everything. So it's like we almost created an underground exorcism team where we started compiling churches that like the traditional Catholic Church.
Yeah.
That people that still believed in this stuff, and you didn't have to go through years of trying to get permission from the Vatican and all this stuff. You still wanted proof, and you wanted to believe the people, but we're just throwing them around. But there's still so we started this like network where we started compiling all the people from different states on where you can get help in your area, because we can't help everybody from here. But we also had people from all over the country coming to Connecticut. So it became a weekly thing. On Wednesdays was Exorcism Day, and we'd have people from all over the country come in here, and that's when we were doing this every week. It became a thing.
Just to jump back quick on that, the young girl from Deerfield, that when you said her eyes changed, did they go black? What do you mean they
turned
changed?
Blue. It's like they turned blue. They're brown.
Oh wow!
They changed like I don't know. I even looked back to see if my video even captures it, because it's old freaking. It looks creepy because it's old video.
Yeah.
But I believe she had brown eyes. Her eyes look blue on the thing, like almost because they changed color. There's another girl we were just dealing with a couple years ago in New Jersey, who actually, as we're interviewing her, it looks like her face is kind of like almost like bubbling, like
blisters.
I can't help but think about the Little Rascals episode when they're making the soup, the cake, or whatever. It's going wee wah, like almost like her skin was going up and down. So I'm recording this on my phone, just the interview with her, and her eyes went to slits, like the pupils.
Yeah.
It's like slits, like a snake,
like a reptile. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's fucking creepy.
But a lot of people say, "Oh, anybody could thrash out, anybody could say they're this and that." Anybody could. They all vomit too. That's the thing we didn't know. 90% of them during the exorcism, they vomit. That's pretty hard to do on cue.
Yeah. You don't, unless you're got like an issue. But yeah.
And then there's another thing that people say. Like people, people could have immense strength. Like they always go to the woman that, her child was trapped underneath a car. And a little woman was able to lift the car and save her son.
Yep.
But then we find out later that that's only because her adrenaline is
spiked
off the charts.
Yeah.
And she's able to do that for a second. These people are merely saying the prayers being sent over them. They're not, and this person rips out a church pew out of the concrete, So, but anyway, so not all of them are have proof or anything, but there are like one particular girl from Virginia. It's a good story for you. I said because we had so many people looking for help, and there was maybe 7 people in our group, we all had suppose we all had 20 to 30 cases to follow up on. So I'd have my own cases I'm working on, and this was a case somebody else in our group was working on, and she was from Virginia. So all I knew is that this woman from Virginia is coming up, and the person in our group believes she's having issues, and this exorcism might help her. That's all we knew about her. And somebody else is picking her up from the airport to come to the church. And it was a thing where we knew it was going to be every Wednesday at 4 o'clock at the church. So whoever was available from the group to come, you were invited, to help restrain or whatever. So this woman was getting driven in from the airport, and me and a police officer was in our group, and we got there early. We were setting up the altar area with the chair and the restraints and the vomit bucket, which became a regular thing. And we were sitting there waiting for this woman to come, and he said, He goes, I got to an argument with my mother last night on the phone. I feel terrible. He goes, as soon as they, it's like you're in church, so you feel holy. Yes. He goes, I got to go apologize when I get home. So it's just a thing in the conversation we're having. So later, the woman comes in. She's undergoing her exorcism. She's the one that bit me on my arm. She's trying to gouge her own eyes out.
Wow.
Like she's in there with her fingers, and I'm holding her hands back, and she bites me. That was my reward for helping. And so, anyways, during this exorcism, she broke out of her restraint, she's biting me, trying to go after the priest. And then during one of the quiet times, she's just sitting there looking at the priest say the prayers, and she turns and points her finger at the cop. And she goes, "The way you talked to your mother last night, that was disgusting." And then just went back to the priest.
Yeah.
Like, that scared me more than any face, any screams, any threats. She knew something that she wasn't supposed to know.
Yeah. That's almost like that line in the Exorcist movie, like how Rachel knew conversations that happened, prior. So would that be like a demonic activity?
I would think so, if you believe in that stuff. I know it's crazy to believe in all of this. Some of you listeners, all of this stuff's crazy to believe. But, I don't lecture anybody. I just relay what I've seen and experienced.
Yeah.
And, I said, again, all this stuff is probably sacrilege, but all this stuff we see, Dogman, UFOs, there could be two aliens up there with joysticks just playing with us, too. Like,
yeah.
Hey, let's throw this off the table, see what happens. Let's do that. I don't know how this works.
Yeah, we have no idea what's going on. Absolutely.
That's why I'm so into the cryptids now. Because people have been investigating this paranormal for like 100 years now, and all the shows, and people are doing it. Every block has their own group now. I'd say, what have they really discovered? Not too much. Yeah. In the cryptid community, people have cameras and all over the woods now, and everybody has their own camera on their phone, and they're definitely out there. So I think in our lifetime we might get a couple answers. Yeah. To this anyway.
Yeah, I hope so. I just did today. Well, people are going to see this tomorrow on Friday, but there's a Harvard study. 2 professors from Harvard and a professor out of Montana are talking about Cryptoterrestrials, and it's an actual, like, I had the paper that was written, and it's still up for peer review right now, and I went through a lot of the details of that in the video, and it's pretty interesting stuff, because there's a lot of
cryptoterrestrial.
Yeah, you are, buddy, you are. So I got a quick question, and I don't know if you're willing to answer this, but I had read somewhere, because I research cryptid experiences, that supposedly Ed and Lorraine were somewhere, and she had this connection to a Bigfoot. Have you ever heard that?
I heard that story.
You don't want to talk about it?
No, it's just I wasn't there.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But, yeah.
I found it interesting. I mean, even if it didn't happen, how do you prove it did? How do you prove it didn't?
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Right.
But, at least, hey, it was, I was getting some news.
I thought it was fascinating because, here you've got 2 people that just strictly deal with the hardest of the cases, and they're talking about,
Bigfoot.
Yeah, I found it interesting.
And about the UFO, I don't even know what the cryptid, what do you call it, cryptoterrestrials?
Yeah. Cryptoterrestrial, yeah.
I was watching one of these smart people, on TV or whatever, saying that if there are other worlds with life on them, there's a 0% chance they look like us. Just from the way people evolve. They can be all totally different looking creatures. So any of these things could be extraterrestrial.
Yeah, well, the Sumerians and the Anunnaki talk about a dog-headed race of aliens. There's reptilian aliens, that supposedly live in deep underground military bases in Dulce, New Mexico, and I only say supposedly
way too many
because
stories for that to be nothing there.
Exactly. We're coming up on 65 minutes, but I wanted it, and I asked permission prior to, and I just wanted to touch basis on this. Father Malachi Martin, obviously hostage of the devil. If anyone's seen this movie, there's a brief interview that Jimmy did. What is your take on that whole case? Because I know people look at it differently. I view it as it happened 100%, and that he did lose his life by that demon that was in that little girl. What's your take on that, if you don't mind me asking?
On the end of his life?
Yeah.
Like I said, again, I wasn't there, and I've heard different stories.
Yep.
It might have been just a coincidence. I mean, he was getting older, and he was,
and he just fell.
He spent some time in the hospital with this and that. He's probably too old to be doing what he was doing, but he would never quit.
Yep.
But if you watch this Hostage to the Devil, which is terrifying, because the ending, it all culminates in this exorcism of this little girl. How old was she? 8 or something?
She was young, 7.
Little girl who, sweet little girl, who during the exorcism, there's all people lined up in the front pew with her, and she starts reciting the Magnificat in Latin, and her parents she doesn't know Latin, and I don't know. See, I don't even know if this is included in the documentary or just stuff I've seen, but the creepiest thing is the priest looks at her, what do you call it? Inquisitively. Yeah. She's speaking Latin. She's doing a prayer in Latin. And then she notices the surprise on his face. She goes, "What's the matter? Am I not doing it right?" Like that. It's just so creepy. Little kids, for some reason, are the creepiest.
Yeah,
doing something. But I said I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I just from personal experiences during exorcisms, another common thing that happens is they threaten you. And I have so many videos of not only the priest, but they'll say this: "Don't think you're going to get away with this." And the place of priest, and you people too, that you think you're helping. We're all going to get you. Not going to be today, not going to be tomorrow, but we're going to get you.
They say we.
Even if it's a Jedi mind trick, it still scares you.
Yeah.
Okay, when's it coming?
Yeah, because
I've had some stuff happen, which I'm not even going to get into, that I attribute to, maybe if I wasn't doing that, all this stuff wouldn't happen.
Maybe if I didn't mess with this shit. Yeah.
So if I see somebody like Malachi Martin that was involved way more than me, that shit can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you just said what you just said was we, how they refer to as we are going to get you. That means there's a legion.
Yes, that's what they say.
There's a legion of them, and that's terrifying to even think about. But the one
you're gonna trick them too. Like what's weird? What's weird, and it's people don't even talk like this, but I do. Because it's the truth, and probably everybody's thinking this. When there's this poor kid in Africa or something has some disease or something, and they'll send this thing around. Please, everybody, pray for this poor kid that he survives or whatever. And you have millions of people, and I've seen prayer work before. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you figure millions of people are praying for this poor kid, and he dies.
Yeah.
But then you're just in a church. In an hour segment of time asking for intercession to help this person, and you're expecting that to work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does. You never know.
Yeah.
I see that's weird how they've done, like I said, they said some things work in God's time, not ours.
Yeah.
And we don't understand everything.
We don't. We definitely don't.
So at least I'll admit it.
Yeah. before we end, I just wanted to say one last thing about the little children thing. The one thing that stuck out with that movie with me was the end of the exorcism when Father Malachi Martin looks at the car, looks at the girl, they're leaving, and she does that kiss, that whore-esque kiss to him. A woman would do. Yeah, and it just, like kind of lost his mind on that. And like you said, she was this sweet 7-year-old little kid speaking Latin. Little dress on. Yeah, so creepy. So.
I got something to say about that, actually, Jeff.
Yeah.
Everyone came up to me after, and it's like, just like when I did my book, it's like my life story. And it's like I left some stuff out. I probably put some stuff in there I could have done it. But it's like you're never happy with it. As soon as you're done with it, you're saying, I should have done this, I should have done this, or I should have left this out. At the end of the, when the movie finally came out, the director, Marty, says, oh, man, he was upset about it. He goes, I would have, you always want to change something, or I could have done this. But the biggest question people had after it came out was like, what happened to the little girl?
Yeah.
Like, nobody tells you what happened to the little girl. Like, maybe a year or two later, just from talking to people, we found out common people that helped this little girl even after those exorcisms that they showed. And she's not dead. She didn't kill herself. She's up there in the Midwest somewhere. I'll say Minnesota, Michigan or something, but she's supposedly fine.
Okay.
And alive.
Awesome. That is awesome. But she did have help afterwards too, though.
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, because I've often wondered that too. And you're right. You're right. It's like, he probably was pissed that he didn't put that in the end, like a little segment of it, because that was an amazing movie. I was blown away with it.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy, I really appreciate you sharing a brief look into, and I'm holding up your book right now, Mr. Haunted Origins. Please check this book out. It's on Amazon. Is it available on Kindle or
not
just
yet? Because it's a whole different format that I wasn't aware of. That I had to change everything into a certain format to get it into Kindle.
All right.
I don't know how to do
and
it
it's
yet.
And he did it right. It's $20. $20 is $20, guys. On Amazon, Mr. Haunted Origins. Jimmy, do me a favor. Don't hang up. I want to talk to you for a minute after we end the
Jeff.
upload. Thank you once again. You want to say goodbye to everybody?
Thank you. Goodbye, dog fam.
And there you have it, folks. What an amazing guy. I really am honored to call Jimmy my friend. Whenever we get on a phone call together, it literally could be a podcast talking about cryptids, paranormal, everything. Like, we just, once we start talking to each other, it is really awesome. And he is truly a great guy, a great source of information. And he agrees with the whole theory, or my whole, not theory, but my whole view on there are no experts. He just has experiences. So with that, I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.